So good evening to everybody, and thank you so much for coming on behalf of our partners around the room and myself, Lamoille County Sheriff. I'm Roger Marcoux. And we've had a brief interruption for a couple of years during COVID, but we're back in person, and we'll try to get that momentum going that we had for so many years before then. And again, I really appreciate you coming. I'd like to thank our community partners that are around the room, which are going to meet shortly here, for coming. And for those of you that I haven't seen, hello. And I think that you're going to find this evening's program pretty interesting, and then we'll build that momentum up again and see if we as a community can figure out what to do, at least in Lamoille County, to help our friends in need here that are hopelessly going down to the path of addiction. So the news, unfortunately, is not really very, very good. The January to March of 2022, or of this year, 2023, we've had 55 opioid-related deaths. The last 3-year average for the same time period, January to March, it's 45, so we're not trending very well. And from 2012 to 2022, we've lost 200 and, we started out at 50 people that we've lost in 2012. 2022 last year, we lost 243 people. So, and the trend is it continues to go upwards. And of course, the country, you may have heard, but the country, we've lost about 109,000 people. I think our guest speaker may get into that a little bit more. So I hate to start off with such a gloomy, gloomy news, but the bottom line is that we still have a lot of work to do, and I'm pretty confident if any place is a community, we can come up with solutions and everything. It's this community here because of how well we all work together. As many of you know, even if people, if families haven't lost loved ones, but their lives of people that are going through substance use disorder are ruined. They ruin families' lives, so it's a monumental impact, and it's so devastating for families to watch loved ones going through this. And there's not many families here in Vermont that haven't seen the impact of this somewhere along the line in their families. So one of the themes tonight is safety, and safety means so many different things to so many people. You've got your personal physical safety, the safety of your loved ones, emotional safety, and right now we're seeing such an increase in violence. Every day you're reading about a shooting somewhere in Burlington area, and a lot of those folks in that area are also working this area as well. So we've got increases in robberies. Back 20 years ago, if you had an armed robbery, if you had 2 or 3 in the state, a year, that was the norm. But now we're seeing that, just about every week, every day, somebody's sticking or up a store or a convenience store or something. So we've got a lot of violence that we're dealing with, and that we're not used to. A lot of gun-related violence, and we're dealing with people from outside the area that, quite frankly, don't care about the lives of the people in our community. So hopefully, between the presentations here today and the opportunity to ask questions, we can, maybe address different ways to keep yourself, your family, and your loved ones safe. So we're going to start with the introductions of our partners, and as I said, we're so fortunate here. You have the tables around the rooms if you want to stop and visit with anybody. If you haven't already done so, please do so. If you've got a particular situation where, you know, it's kind of sensitive, I'm sure that you can talk to any one of our partners and step aside or make an appointment to talk with them later. So we're going to start the program going here tonight with Jessica Bickford from Healthy Lamoille Valley. And what the format's going to be, these folks are going to come up and talk for 3 to 5 minutes, and we're going to get the hook if it goes beyond that. I don't know how I'm doing it. 1 minute left for me? So anyways, we've got a few people, and then we've got a very special speaker tonight, and after that, I'll tell you a little bit about that person, and here we go. Jessica.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you all for being here. Jeff's my timekeeper, so make sure when I get down to 1 minute, good, I'll stay on task. So Healthy Lamoille Valley, we're substance prevention. We know that youth often start using early and often young, and that leads to greater problems and a lot of what we're seeing later on. So Healthy Lamoille Valley, we're a substance prevention coalition. We're individuals and organizations coming together. And basically just by being in this room, you're part of this work. So thank you. We're also a program of the Lamoille Family Center, and we have Carol and Jeff from the Family Center here tonight. So just a few quick things. We have some resources on the table. We also have, before we get to resources, we have Allison Link, who's my colleague over in the corner, and her son Hirsch. And the rest of our team is off today or not able to make it. So we have some resources on the table that I wanted to draw your attention to really quickly. We have prescription drug mailback envelopes. These are prepaid, and you can just put unwanted medicines in the envelopes. Over there's actually a banner that has the local locations, and I'm really pleased to announce that CVS Pharmacy in Morrisville is now also a prescription drug take-back location, so year-round, those facilities are there. And can we give a really large shout-out to Roger and the Lamoille County Sheriff's team, because they actually go around and all the lock boxes or return boxes at law enforcement, they go around and collect those and take those unwanted medicines back. So Roger actually spearheads that program in a lot of ways for the state, so thank you to you and the team. As I mentioned, substance misuse often doesn't start, as adults. It starts really, young. And we as families can start really young. We have this. You can keep kids safe and drug-free. We worked this year to create this with the Children's Integrated Services team. And really thinking about prevention from a really young age. We have some young kids in the room, and what are you putting in your bodies? How are you modeling substance use? How do you manage stress? All of those things play into part there. We also have questions to ask your doctor when going to get a prescription to avoid accidental dependence. We have a little bit of who we are. And we work on risk and protective factors. And so, we often think of what are those risks? What are the things that set anybody in our community up for, dependence? But we also need to work on those protective factors side. So what are we doing to engage our youth and families to help them, have the skills they need, but also to feel valued in the community? And one project I'd like to kind of highlight really quickly is we have our Coaches as Protective Factors resource, and really looking at who are those people in our community that are connecting with our youth, and often and early, and how do we empower them to know what are the resources in our community. And so if you have questions about this, Allison is a great person to talk to about that, and if you have your kids are involved in youth sports, feel free to take one of these for their coach. And definitely stop by our table. We also have a youth coalition, and we have Arlo sitting over there tonight. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to pass it back to Roger. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Jess. I forgot to mention, if anybody needs restrooms or anything, they're straight out back. And also, there are some bags with some goodies in them out there as well, so make sure and grab one of those before you leave. There's plenty of them, I think. So the next step, I'd like to invite, let me see, I guess I'm going to invite Meagan and Matt from Lamoille Health Partners. Where are you guys at? and they handle a lot of our MAT, our medical assisted treatment programs. So there you go, Meagan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Meagan DeWitt, and I am the program manager for the MAT team here in the Lamoille Valley. MAT stands for Medication Assisted Treatment. So our team uses medications like buprenorphine or Vivitrol, or in some locations methadone, to treat opiate dependence and opiate use disorder. In the Lamoille Valley, we have 7 different practices that are offering medication-assisted treatment with buprenorphine or other medications. We have 28 providers who are prescribing those medications and currently serving about 400 patients in the area. Medication-assisted treatment is an evidence-based practice, and there's the most research to support using medications for the treatment of opiate use disorder. We use a combination of those medications with behavioral treatment to really treat the whole person. So not only are we looking at how do we avoid withdrawal when someone stops using opioids, address cravings, but we're also looking at how to bring someone into recovery. We do that by working with the providers who are prescribing those medications, and then the MAT team is a group of registered nurses and licensed alcohol and drug counselors that are located in the different practices. One of the other big rollouts that we've had in the last couple of years was our RAM program, or Rapid Access to Medication-Assisted Treatment. This means that when someone asks for help, they can be inducted into a program and started on medication within 72 hours of reaching out or starting that process. I say 72 hours because sometimes we need to account for transportation or getting someone there, but really, most of the time, it's within 24 hours or less that we're able to get someone into the office and be seen. All of our practices are able to take on new patients. We are also doing Hep C and HIV testing for individuals and have recently been able to offer more local Hep C treatment. But previously, people would have to go out of county or to one of the hospitals. So being able to do that here or in their primary care office has been really great for a lot of people who maybe wouldn't be able to get that treatment otherwise. Roger talked a little bit about safety, and one of the biggest things for us is creating a safe environment for someone to come and talk about things that are often kept in secret, often tried to be hidden from their loved ones or their employers or things like that. So we try and create an open space where people feel like they can talk about those things without judgment and without stigma. And we also take like many of the other people sitting at this table, we make a lot of efforts to speak at community events to help reduce the stigma, not only around addiction, substance use, but also around medication-assisted treatment, which sometimes can be misunderstood. Should I invite Matt up now? Sure. Okay.
Hi, I'm Matt Sadowsky from Lamoille Health Partners Behavioral Health and Wellness. We are the outpatient mental health, or one of the outpatient mental health and substance use treatment providers in the community. We have 4 psychiatric providers, and we have about 20 mental health and substance use providers there, so pretty robust team. I know it's the opioid summit, but I just wanted to highlight, as I was looking through some data for tonight, for Vermont teens, 76% are more likely than the average teen in this country to use drugs last month. 83% of those used cannabis last month, of that 76%. And 22% of all youth 12 to 17 report cannabis in the last year here in Vermont, and 14% in the last year used alcohol, 12 to 17-year-olds. So pretty high numbers. At Behavioral Health and Wellness, we really, I think our sweet spot is co-occurring care, and what that means is that sort of place between mental health and substance use treatment. And so another quick statistic or two, of the almost 1 million adolescents last year, with co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders, only 3.6% received co-occurring care. So that means some of them got substance use treatment, some of them got mental health treatment, but the combination of the two is what's so often needed and so hard for people to find. And that's what we really strive to do there. Last year we served about 2,500 different people for over about 16,000 therapy sessions. So I share that because I'm pretty proud of that. It's pretty amazing, hard work. No. Thank you. And just a shout out to our partners at Lamoille County Mental Health. The trend we've seen this year is around suicidal youth and young adults. It has been unbelievable the number of kids that are struggling and suffering. And we've partnered with them really well over the last many years. And our folks at Behavioral Health and Wellness are doing that work every day. And it's pretty serious. So I think today's topic of safety, sorry, I don't really know how to use a microphone. I think about safety, I think about connection, and I think about our connection to ourselves, our connection to our families, to our teachers, to our communities, and to each other. And that's the missing piece we're seeing over and over again. And what we're seeing most often in the teens is the lack of connection, a lack of a real relationship with themselves. And that's where we try to do the work, to help them see themselves, be seen for who they are, and to grow in that direction. So that's the work we're doing. Thank you all for being here. I think I got the mic now.
Next up is our partners from North Central Vermont Recovery Center, Shannon and Liam. I don't know if both of you are coming, or there we go. Thank you.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Matt, are you that tall? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Carchidi. I'm the Executive Director for the North Central Vermont Recovery Center. And we are located here in the heart of Morrisville on Brooklyn Street. And we are one of 12 recovery centers here in the state of Vermont. And I have one of my colleagues here, Karen. I don't know where Karen is now, but she is from the St. Albans Turning Point. So North Central Vermont Recovery Center, we are a peer-run organization, and we offer a safe space for individuals to come. All of our services are free, and what we do is we offer peer recovery services. So when people come to see us, we have a person there on staff with a lived experience that can relate to that person. All of our services are no barrier, so there's no cost. We don't ask any questions. We don't have anyone fill out any paperwork unless they are actually wanting to engage in one of our programs, which is the Peer Recovery Coaching Program. And we try to meet people where they are. And that could be, they could be in crisis. They could be folks who are long-term sobriety who are looking for extra supports. We saw over 8,000 people come through our doors last year for a combination of recovery coaching and for support group meetings. If you have anyone in the community, a friend, a family member, someone you're working with, we have a support group meeting that happens every day at the center, including on the weekends. So we have a really close and supportive group there at the Recovery Center. When we're talking about safety, we do a lot of work with harm reduction. So harm reduction can be that we are meeting people exactly where they are. That could mean that they're coming through the doors in active use, and maybe they're just looking to use the restroom or to use the computer or have a meal, and so we open the doors for them. Relapse is a part of people's recovery, and we welcome folks to come back. We do not lose hope in people. That's a hard part of our job. People coming in and out, but what we do see is we do see people recover, and our staff at the Recovery Center, I'm a person in long-term recovery, so we are proof that it does work. So in addition to that, we also distribute Narcan. So in the bags that Roger mentioned at the front, there are event bags right here, and in those we placed a box of Narcan, which has 2 doses of Narcan in it, and also some fentanyl test strips. So even if you feel like you couldn't benefit, it's always, you never know when you could be in a situation that maybe it could you could use it, or if you want to give it to someone. We do a lot of harm reduction with family members. We had someone who was in as recent as today where family members are coming in and just looking for support of how are they prepared if someone were to overdose in their home? And so we talk about Narcan and we talk about support groups, and we have support groups for family members as well. So I think that's it. I want to turn it over to Liam. Liam is our new assistant director at the Recovery Center, and he has been the supervisor for our recovery coach program up at Copley Hospital. That's in its 4th year now, and so he's done some amazing work up there. So I'm going to turn it over to Liam now. Thank you.
Shannon already introduced me and said everything, so that's cool. So one of the pieces that we do is 24/7, 365 coverage of the emergency department. So that means that if somebody shows up in the emergency department with anything related to substance use, whether they've had an overdose or whether they just fell off a ladder and they happen to be intoxicated at the time, or they even happen to mention to their nurse that they drink more than 1 beer a day, they call us, we come up, we have a conversation with them. So it's a way for us to do, we call it a seed planting program, because a lot of people that we talk to don't necessarily know that they want to talk to us yet. And we give them some resources and give them business cards and give them schedules and say, come talk to us whenever you want. And some of them do, and sometimes we see some of them back in the emergency department again, and we show up every single time and we treat them with dignity and respect and compassion, and with the hope that one of those times it's going to be the time that they want to come and get some of our services. And we work with a lot of people that this took a lot of tries for them, and that's more common than getting it on the first try. And so we treat every single one of those visits like it's going to be the visit. And we get frustrated. Everybody gets frustrated, but it's just showing up for people and treating them like human beings. And I think that that's one of the pieces that's been missing a lot everywhere. This is not just in our community. Our community actually does a great job, and the rest of the country is using us as a model of the way that our community partners collaborate with one another to do wraparound care. But I just did a anti-stigma campaign for Healthy Lamoille Valley. We didn't want to call it an anti-stigma campaign because that just sounded very anti, but that's what it turned out to be. And the posters for it are all up at our table. There's some that you can take and plaster wherever you want. Be responsible with that because all the police are here, so don't put them on their cars. But this isn't really like a plea for, tooting my graphic design horn. This is to say that when I was doing those, every single thing that I was able to put on those posters was stuff that I heard. And it was either stuff that was said to me or it was stuff that was said out in the community that I overheard. So it's still around and it's still out there. And I think that when people feel like they can ask for help, when they feel safe asking for help, then they will ask for help. But there was a study done about people in recovery, and 1 out of 12 people was actually seeking recovery support services. This was done by Boston Medical Center. And of all of the other ones who didn't seek recovery support services, they said that their number 1 reason for that was because of stigma, was because feeling shame about running into somebody that they knew or how their family was going to see them or something like that. But these are people's family members, and they're our neighbors and our community members, and it's really important to see that we can become people who are standing up here at a podium instead of, being in the emergency department, and one of our coaches is one of those people. So that's what we kind of want everybody else to start seeing out there as well. So.
Okay, next up is our friends from Jenna's Promise. And I don't know if it's going to be Daniel or Greg or both of you. I don't see Greg. Okay, Daniel's going to take it. And Greg, if you feel like coming up, come on up. So.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about Jenna's Promise while Greg Mosey is on up here. So Jenna's Promise, we're based in Johnson, and we have what's called the Recovery Village model. And really what we have aimed to do is to fill gaps in the system and address what we thought were barriers, both in our local and regional system of care, to partner with people who do things extremely well to change the paradigm of how we care for people, and meanwhile addressing stigma. So we talk about providing a safe place to live and a safe place to work. We have 3 recovery residences, the first of which is called Ray of Hope. We house up to 17 women currently, but we serve both men and women in our programs. Jenna's Promise started, our first building was the community center, Jenna's House on St. John's Road. And over the years, we've made a series of acquisitions to build out this footprint in the town of Johnson. And we kind of talk about, we don't just try to rehabilitate people, but to rehabilitate a town and to make it a more recovery-friendly community. Coinciding with our 3 recovery residences, we also have our workforce development program. We currently employ almost 40 people in recovery across our organization. So we have JP's Promising Goods. We have Jenna's Coffee House, which is in downtown Johnson. We have our community and event center upstairs at Jenna's House. We have our coffee roasting business, Jenna's Promise Roasting Company, and we now hold the contract for all the rest areas in the state of Vermont. So anywhere you go, if you want to stop at one of the rest areas and get a free cup of joe and hear our story, we get to share that with almost 3 million people a year. And really, that's the story of Lamoille County and how we can come together to help people. Greg and Don help lead a family group every other Wednesday. We have a whole range of support groups and partner with a lot of amazing organizations and people in this community, and really just keep trying to push the envelope and affect all the way from the policy makers down to what we do here in this community to empower our partners to create change and save lives. And it was really born out of tragedy, but where we are trying to spread hope. So with that, I'll share.
Thank you. I think Daniel pretty much got it all covered, but our program's based on a safe place to live and a safe place to work, and that's how it started, which led to the Promising Goods, which led to the coffee roasting, and these folks, once they get through the process and they work on their, we call it's a disease, right? So it's no different than any other disease. They got to have a little help, and we're very proud of at what we're doing there. So I say it like once you get the veil of addiction off these folks, you get to see the person, and that can take a little while sometimes, and maybe multiple times. But man, it's and I know everybody in this room that's in the same thing that we're doing has seen the same thing. These folks, once you get them on their feet and they get moving and they feel wanted and they feel worthy, it all changes. And I've heard Don say to people, and we say it in meetings, you're worth it. If you're suffering from addiction, you're worth it. You're worth being saved. You're worth the time. You're worth whatever we can help you get through. And that's kind of how we feel about it. And I don't know, I think we got a little momentum going. We're trying to become sustainable without too much government help and things like that. And we're getting there. The coffee roaster is doing real well. And it's giving jobs to people to get out there and get on their feet. We try to teach them how to act in public when they're working at a place, proper workforce development, so they understand that, you're not you're not where you are. You're where you are now. And they're get just very, very proud of the people and our team. I have a few board members here tonight, and Jenna's Promise team, and I appreciate all you folks coming, support. Hopefully some folks in this room can learn how to work. I know the Recovery Center in Morrisville has a family program, so do we. So if you know somebody suffering, go see these guys, come down and see us. We do ours every other Wednesday. Tomorrow night, we're having the ex-governor of Kentucky come to do a talk, teach us about his system, which is similar to ours. It's called the Fletcher model. He'll be up, and I believe we start around 5 o'clock. If anybody'd like to join, you're more than welcome. So thank you for everybody, especially the folks that set this up. You know, I know Roger and Jessica and a lot of folks worked on this, and a few others that I don't know right now, but they did. And we thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Just another couple things here before we go to our guest speaker. I'd like to acknowledge some other folks that you haven't heard from that are in the room, and I hope I don't forget anybody, but Savita Health, Lamoille County Mental Health, see Michael here, who we work together a lot, Treatment Associates, Johnson Health Center with Carolyn and Jeff, and I want to particularly recognize our law enforcement folks in the room. Chief Luno is here, or he was, and then Deputy Chief Whitcomb with Stowe Police, Chief Luno with Morristown Police, and quite a few members of my department are here, and as well as some folks. I see Sergeant Audette and some folks from other departments. But I hope that Lamoille County law enforcement isn't unique in working with their partners around the room. But we certainly do have a special relationship with all of you. And I'm proud of law enforcement for recognizing that this isn't just about guns and handcuffs. And I don't think it's, these people really do get it. It's not an act. And I appreciate it. And I just saw Heather from Restorative Center as well. So I know I'm going to miss some people. But anyways, thank you for being here. And a special thank you for Kat Gallagher and her team, Superintendent Catherine Gallagher, and her team for setting up this space and dealing with all the last-minute shuffling that we've done. This is just an outstanding community space, and I appreciate it very much. All right, so we're going to go to our guest speaker here, and I'll just give you some little biographical information. Mr. Paul J. Spera currently serves as an Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration's New England Field Division. In this role, Mr. Spera has oversight of all DEA operations in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Mr. Spera is in his 20th year of law enforcement. In this role, Mr. Spera has been instrumental in starting several innovative and successful initiatives to combat the illicit drug epidemic plaguing northern New England. These programs include an enforcement project targeting methamphetamine trafficking dubbed Operation Hailstorm. This program, which has collaboration from various state and local law enforcement agencies, focuses enforcement efforts on the transportation networks importing dangerous drugs into New England. Mr. Spera was also critical in the area of fentanyl and methamphetamine awareness efforts for law enforcement as he organized the DEA-led basic narcotics school in New Hampshire. Mr. Spera has made numerous public appearances on behalf of DEA, speaking on the topic of fentanyl, drug trafficking trends on a global scale, and law enforcement efforts. Mr. Spera has oversight of the DEA Operation Engage, which is critical to reduce the harm of opioids in the Manchester, New Hampshire region. He recently organized a DEA Citizens Academy, which I would like to know more about, Paul, in an attempt to continue raising awareness of the drug threats facing our communities. Prior to his assignment leading Northern New England, Mr. Spera served as the executive assistant to the DEA's Chief of Congressional and Public Affairs in Washington, D.C., a DEA group supervisor in New Haven, Connecticut, and a special agent both in Nogales, Arizona, and Cartagena, Colombia resident offices. During his time in those offices, Mr. Spera targeted both Mexican and Colombian cartels producing and subsequently importing multi-ton amounts of illegal drugs into the U.S. drug market. He began his law enforcement career as a deputy U.S. Marshal with the U.S. Marshals Service in Tucson, Arizona. Welcome, Mr. Spera.
So, I usually don't get too nervous, but today actually is a little different. I'm a little nervous right now, I gotta be honest. So, I got to spend much of the day today here in Lamoille County, and much in the afternoon with our friends at Jenna's Promise. What they're doing is amazing. And I gotta say, I was pretty intimidated by how great and how resolute they are and how much they've accomplished in such a short period of time. Additionally, we just had many individuals come up and speak about all that they are doing. And each time that someone spoke, whether it was Jessica or Liam, I took something from that. You know, you have that village recovery was a great one. I learned so much about that. And so I think during my bio, which is way too long, I gotta cut that now that I've noticed it, I think there's one important piece to note that's gonna relate to all of you. I'm not from here, okay? And truth be told, this is the first location that I've ever worked in that I am dealing and working with the end user, okay? I started my career in Nogales, Arizona, which is where a gigantic port of entry is that separates Mexico and Arizona, obviously Mexico and the United States. The drugs I would seize were never going to stay in Nogales, Arizona. Nogales, Arizona is an 8,000, a town of about 8,000 or 12,000 people. I have been gone for many years. My next place was Cartagena, Colombia, where, enough said, right? It's cocaine. It's a coastal city that cocaine leaves, and they don't have a gigantic drug use issue in Colombia. My next location was New Haven, Connecticut. Now, we certainly dabbled in the end user there. When I say dabbled in it, I mean investigate organizations and things like that. However, the majority of what we did was target organizations sitting in Hartford, Waterbury, and New Haven that would send drugs to places like here. And so I am able and already have learned something from each one of you that I've come in contact with or listened to. So thank you. What I hope to do today is provide you guys some insight on a national and worldwide trend. After I left New Haven, Connecticut, DEA has this horrible rule that if you promote, I'll be very brief on this because who cares, other than my kids, if you promote, you eventually have to do a stint in our DEA headquarters, which is moving to the most expensive place on earth, Washington, D.C. I had to do 2 years there, and that time I worked in our Office of Congressional and Public Affairs. I would, on a day-to-day basis, work with the head of the DEA who is the DEA administrator. Her name is Ann Milgram. She is wonderful. And she would love to be at a place like this right here, right now. I say that only to advise you that during my time with her working hand in hand, she would do tons of things like this and brief senators, congressmen and women, and the like. I would be by her side to some extent and learn as she would be briefed by our operations section in headquarters that would give her an overview of what we are facing as a nation when it comes to drug trafficking. Am I doing something? Should I stop moving? Can I move too much?
That mic is the only one.
I don't like to stand behind this, but I will do my best. How about if I turn like this? Can I turn like that?
Walk in front of these mics and they'll make you.
Perfect. So I'll do that. What was I talking about again? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Fast cars.
Fast cars. I don't own any. So we'll get started here. What that time with her demonstrated to me and allotted me access to information. Now, this information, subsequent to that, has become public. Our administrator has been very upfront in what we are facing as a nation when it comes to drug trafficking. Okay? Let's get to it. What time should I stop?
Keep going.
Got it. I don't think you guys would be in this room today if you didn't know this. You may not have known the exact numbers, as Roger alluded to, and he is correct. The number is actually higher. But this is a CDC stat. This is not a DEA stat. This is a CDC stat. Talks about the deaths, drug poisonings. You guys are smart, and I mean that with sincerity. You guys see the term drug poisonings as opposed to overdose deaths. That is something that the DEA is steadfast on. That is something that she, and now all of us have, that is a term that we utilize. The thought process is, especially when it comes to fentanyl, right? So you have 108,000 deaths. About 70% of these deaths are going to be synthetic opioid related. Okay, 70% of that is going to be fentanyl. You're looking at about less than 5% is going to be heroin. Okay, heroin is going by the wayside. We use the term heroin, but for all intents and purposes, it is gone. Okay? There has been a switch in Mexico by two cartels, the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, that have altered the way drug trafficking is and will be for many, many, many decades to come. And that is the switch from plant-based drugs to synthetic-based drugs. When you have plant-based drugs, you have things that are dependent upon nature, wind, rain, sun, individuals to harvest land, crops. And in Mexico, we have switched to synthetic-based drugs. Precursor chemicals coming in from China, going to Mexico and being manufactured in Mexico before being distributed up north through our ports of entry. We have gone from something that is finite to something that is infinite. There is no end. They can make as much as they want to make of it. And so, what you see is amounts of drugs increasing. What you see is potency of drugs increasing. What you see is the various types of manners in which they will put drugs in, how they will place them to, there was a great word that was used, the anti-stigma, right? The stigma. Okay, and that's something that we will go into here shortly. I can certainly talk more about it, but I sort of just briefly touched on it and moved on. You have two cartels. You have the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Those are both cities in Mexico. The Sinaloa Cartel, for those that don't know, are the most famous of the cartels probably in all of Mexico. Its leader for many, many years was Chapo Guzman. You may remember him. He would make a weekly dash from prison and the embarrassment of Mexico prior to them arresting him finally and extraditing him on Barack Obama's last day in office. They did not like then upcoming President Donald Trump, and so to show something as solidarity to Barack Obama, they extradited him to the United States on Barack Obama's last day in office. Then you have the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel is an ultraviolet organization that made its mark, its leader made its mark by shooting down a Mexican Army helicopter. His name is El Mencho. He's, again, sort of renowned for authorizing a rocket launcher to shoot down successfully a Mexican military helicopter. Those two organizations produce, traffic, drugs into our country through our ports of entry. Now, once they're at our port of entry, how does it work? How do the drugs come across our borders? The majority of drugs, again, well over 95%, it's probably more than that, of our hard illicit drugs, taking aside marijuana, okay, let's focus today on cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl, come across our borders through our ports of entry, okay? They come across in vehicles that have aftermarket hidden compartments or traps. Traps in tires, traps in engines, traps in seats, hidden compartments. Then you have tractor trailers. Tractor trailers with legitimate goods, produce especially. When I was in Nogales, there would be tractor trailers. There's a gigantic produce business, huge amount of produce warehouses on the other side in Arizona, and you'd have tons and tons of tractor trailers coming across our borders, and a lot of them, that's not fair. Some of them would be commingled with illegal drugs. Just so you guys are aware, just so you know, in Arizona, it's the desert, it's vast amounts of land, and so you have large portions of it that do not have a border, and so you would have marijuana traffickers, you call them backpackers, that would put about 45 pounds of marijuana on a potato sack and walk across through very difficult terrain, very, very difficult terrain, for sometimes a week at a time before dropping that load of marijuana off. In my 6 years, I did not seize hard drug, we'll use that term, hard drug, for this particular presentation. I did not seize a hard drug being trafficked through that area. I don't know if that has changed. I don't think it has. Just to finalize this, because people may find it interesting, although I think many of you already know this, there is one particular drug that the Mexican cartels cannot produce. They cannot produce it because it's natural to only a certain region, and that is, of course, cocaine. Cocaine is produced primarily in Colombia, the southern part of it, with some abilities in Ecuador and Peru. Mexico does traffic it. It would go through, the majority of it goes through, and again, I will talk about this, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. How it is transported is, it will be transported through ship or container up into Mexico ports of entry, depending on what cartel controls which port, and then they would bring it up through the interior of the state before sending it through our ports of entry and into distribution cities like Los Angeles, Phoenix, Houston, and Atlanta, Georgia, and even Chicago. Those are our distribution hub cities. If you can imagine a Walmart distribution, that's how it works for the cartels. It'll cross to a tractor trailer, then it'll be picked up and taken to locations such as that, and then the cartel based in Mexico will coordinate tractor trailer runs into interior portions of the country where it'll be given to organizations that will start wholesaling it. New York, Hartford's, Boston's, many others. And then it will be given down to smaller cities where it'll be cut up and placed into more user-level ways in within traffic, which we will get into here shortly. So, this is a funny slide, and I'm going to take someone's water eventually. Future person sitting here, I apologize, but I am the So, I'm not a big read guy while I say it, but it's an extremely important slide. But it's weird talking about it here in northern New England, and here is why. Fentanyl pills are a new way, not so new, but still a newer way, that these organizations are trying to get new users, right? They are trying to get new users. We went 10 minutes ago and spoke about how there is now an infinite supply of drugs. Well, if there's an infinite supply of drugs, we need a bigger supply of users, a bigger demand for it, and as Liam alluded to, I believe it was Liam, forgive me if it wasn't, there was a stigma associated. So there is a stigma associated, and again, for all the people that are much better versed at speaking to this than I am, I still do think there's some level of a stigma for putting a needle in your arm or even sniffing something up your nose, but as a society in the United States, we do not have that same stigma with swallowing a pill. We've been doing it for a while. So they started to place fentanyl, and it's not just fentanyl, it's methamphetamine, but started to place fentanyl into pills to broaden out the amount of people who would look to use it. Obviously, much of the opioid epidemic stemmed from years back with Purdue Pharma and OxyContin. So 2 milligrams is what the DEA scientists at our labs consider to be a lethal dose. 6 out of 10 pills with fentanyl contain a potentially lethal dose. So, I started off, as soon as I hit on this slide, with saying, this is a weird slide. Well, why is it a weird slide? Well, it's a weird slide because last year, DEA in 2022 seized 50.7 million pills. 51 million pills we seized in the United States. That is an insane amount of pills. But we didn't seize that many in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. It hasn't caught on. I would love to communicate with individuals here that, again, are much more well-versed on this, on why it hasn't caught on. Maybe it hasn't. My people aren't doing a good enough job. Let me know, and we can talk about that too. But we haven't seized a ton of those. It's very odd. You are seeing them seized in other cities by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. They're being sold for $2 a pill, $1 a pill. They're basically giving them away, and that is something that is going to be a continual statement that I make. Giving away, lowering prices, things like that. So again, I think this is an important slide. It is an important slide, but it's not something we have seen a ton of here in Vermont. I don't know. I think I have some foresight on some of the emerging drug threats that we're seeing and will continue to see in northern New England. I don't know yet if this is one of them. And again, you may come to me here in an hour and say, hey, Knucklehead, it's already here. And I'd like to hear that. But we are not seizing them and seeing them in large quantities. A lot of times with a place like Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, we will get seizures. And sometimes, very rare, but sometimes we'll get a phone call like, hey, we made a seizure. A trooper made a seizure on, I-80, I-7, name that interstate and say, hey man, just so you know, this person had blank you know, blank fake street in Burlington, Vermont was destined for you. We don't see those hotels. Again, I think you guys all know that, but that is not a lot. Drugs are distributed here in Vermont, in the overwhelming majority, through what we call, everyone calls, bundles. Bundles are 10 wax folds of paper with a specific amount of fentanyl in them and then wrapped up. That is the manner in which our Burlington office and the local law enforcement sees fentanyl here in the state of Vermont. That is not the manner in which it is trafficked into our country. Like I alluded to earlier, they are sold, fentanyl is sold in the kilogram amount, and then individuals, organizations will have mills, well, they will cut up the drug and place it into this. And then they will put their stamp on it to let you know that it's their product, their logo, if you will. There's a slide that we're going to get into in a little bit, which is going to discuss, well, where do drugs come from here in Vermont? And the answer is, unfortunately, everywhere. So what you see in Vermont, and again, I have a slide, but it's basically just a map of Vermont that you guys, again, don't need to see. What you see here in the state of Vermont is you see polydrug distributors coming in from cities, coming in here because of the amount of money that they can seize their drugs for, that they can make selling their drugs much more than they could in the city in which they reside. So in the investigations that the Burlington, DEA has an office in Burlington. That is the only office in the state. We have the whole state. That office covers that whole state. The whole state is covered by that office. That was the part I messed up on. That was weird. Polydrug distributors. What you see is you see organizations coming in with the whole wide array. They will bring crack, they will bring cocaine, they will bring the bundles of fentanyl, and they will even start to bring, to some extent, a much lesser extent, methamphetamine. They will come up here from various cities. In the investigations a couple of years back, nothing recent, but it's all the same. You had Springfield, Massachusetts, Hartford, Waterbury, Connecticut, New York City, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, probably missing them. And then there was one that I learned today, Detroit. I was pretty shocked when I heard that. We don't see that in Maine and New Hampshire. Maine and New Hampshire have one city that supplies the states. Lawrence, Massachusetts supplies New Hampshire and Maine. Obviously there are, maybe not 90% of those two states. It's fascinating to me that there are so many organizations vying for distribution networks here in the state. And that's what we're seeing. They'll come up, they'll embed with users for an extended period of time until their drug supply runs out. Sometimes they'll order up more, or sometimes they'll head back with the profits, purchase, spend some time, and come back up. They utilize, which is the next slide, but again, you know it, they utilize, how do they get here? They utilize just the same way I got here. I took the interstate. That's how they get here. I think a really important part of this after speaking to so many and hearing from so many impressive people today, is xylazine. Xylazine is prevalent in the state of Vermont in fentanyl. So the question that I had a couple of months ago was, when is xylazine being placed within fentanyl? Are the Mexican cartels doing it? Or if they are, when are they doing it? Are they doing when it's in Mexico? Is it a way for Mexican organizations that are running in those source cities I talked about, the Houstons, the Atlantas, and the Phoenixes, and the Riversides of the world? And the answer is no. Xylazine is being placed in our drugs, in fentanyl, when it gets to those organizations that I mentioned. So a Philadelphia or Springfield-based organization will buy kilogram quantities of fentanyl from a Mexican organization. It'll arrive in a hidden compartment, or it'll arrive in a tractor trailer. They will take it to a stash house, likely down there, but it could be up here, but likely down there, but it could be both. And they will cut it, right? They will cut it to make a profit. Right? A kilo of fentanyl will be stepped on multiple times to create multiple kilos of fentanyl. Then it'll be divided up into bundles. Then it'll be distributed, which is tripling a profit, and then coming up here, where you're probably even tripling it there. The amount of money is insane. So, last year, DEA domestic seizures in 2022. What did we do as a country? So, I think some of the things that jumps out at you is, certainly talk about a lot of it, total fentanyl and total fentanyl excluding pills, right? So we seized 26,000 pounds of fentanyl, which includes fake pills. Take away all the fake pills that we seize that contain fentanyl, and you're still at 13,000. So it's actually exactly at 50%, right? 50% of our nation's fentanyl seizures done by DEA in 2022 were pills. And this sort of goes to my point below, a few minutes before. In the New England, so that's 6 states, Connecticut to Maine, total fentanyl we seized 800 pounds. Excluding pills, 645. So that basically means that 160 pounds were fentanyl pills. A much higher quantity was powder. Much higher quantity was powder. Now, why is that? I think it's safe to say that the answer lies in where it always lies when it comes to drug trafficking, and that's profit and greed. Oh, wow. Thank you. Jeez. Remember that guy that used to talk at the auction in the commercials back like 20 years ago with the mustache? That might be me for the next 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes left. I'll make this statement and then I'll move on. Tranq or xylazine is used to cut. When you get to a place with fentanyl and pills, you're unable to step on those. You're unable to cut pills. A pill is a pill. You buy it the way it is and you sell it the way it is. When it comes to powdered fentanyl, you can step on it multiple times. That is the thought process to me, because here in New England, Mexican organizations do not run the street level distribution routes. They work with a large amount of various organizations, namely Dominican drug trafficking organizations, and they will be the ones to cut it. Purchase it, and then they'll cut it. And so I think that is why we haven't seen an onset of pills. It's because the primary sources of supply for our drug users here in the 3 states are Dominican drug trafficking organizations, whether they're in Hartford, Waterbury, Springfield, or Lawrence, and they prefer the powder. I think we can skip this. So I'm at 4 minutes left. This is an opioid talk, and so I'm glad that I spent the first 26 minutes and 30 seconds talking about fentanyl, but I'm going to spend the last few minutes talking about methamphetamine, because methamphetamine to me is extremely scary, and it is one that I hope I am wrong on with my foresight. I did not know about the pills. I have a bad feeling about this. The cartels are producing methamphetamine in gigantic labs. They need to create markets for them. We have seen gigantic amounts of methamphetamine come into New Hampshire and to some extent Maine. They are creating markets that had not existed in the past. The northern New England places, obviously in rural locations, people use meth. They used to cook it up in one-pot meth labs. This is high purity methamphetamine that is being produced by Mexican cartels and given to us, fronted. Here, take this, see if you like it. When I was in Nogales, Arizona, 1 pound of methamphetamine cost $8,000, $9,000 at the border. We have an operation going on right now in Los Angeles. Methamphetamine prices are $800. $800 for a pound of methamphetamine. Here in northern New England, we are seeing it for $2,000 to $3,000. A pound of meth. That's scary. It's scaring me. I am genuinely nervous about it. What I hope we never see with methamphetamine is its arrival, because it creates a different threat to our community. It genuinely does. Individuals, and again, there are professionals here. There can be some level of paranoia. There can be some level of violence, more so than someone that is on an opioid. And so I hope I am dead wrong, but what I am seeing is, because they have so much of it, they are pushing it and giving it. A cartel-driven market is the term we utilize. Trying to place something in a place, in a city or state where it has never been before. I will finish with this last one. I know we are done. Is how does methamphetamine get here? Well, I'm going to go to my last point, which was about the pills, okay? The pills are not as popular because you can't cut it. Methamphetamine looks like crystals. You cannot put more powder onto something that is not powder. So, these organizations are less apt to want to mess with this. And so what we are seeing is a direct line. That was weird. It's going to the Atlantic Ocean. I promise you it's not. Going up to Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine through our parcels, through the mail stream. We have done some investigations that have people that have moved out there, relocated, buying it, hooking up friends, and sending stuff out in pound quantities, and then the money flowing back. I'm trying to think of how to end it. And I'll end it like this. I have a lot to learn, but my bio, albeit long, was accurate. I have done this, I've done a presentation like this many times. Probably 25. This community and what I saw today and what I saw the first 40 minutes of this summit is impressive and gives me hope that a place like this is going to be able to thrive an environment that I just spent the last half hour educating you guys on. I hope you guys took something from it, and I got a lot to learn, but I thank you for teaching me what you've taught me, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, Paul, you can stay right up here. We're going to now ask all of the panel members to come up. Can I get the lights? Thanks, Scott. And I just wanted to recognize a couple other people that have come in. And from Senator Welch's office, Ina Backus. Ina, thank you for coming. And did I see our representative from the Morristown area, Sadia? There you go. Hi, Sadia. How you doing? Did I miss any other dignitaries? Okay, thanks. Yeah, go ahead, any place. So we did have one question here tonight that was sent in. Then we'll take questions from the audience, and I'll help facilitate that. So while we do that, I'm going to read this question, and it's directed at Paul. And Jessica just gave it to me here before the event started. But a recent study in the American Journal of Public Health shows that opioid-related law enforcement drug seizures result in increased fatal overdoses up to 3 weeks afterwards, up to twice as many as expected. In other words, overdoses doubled with drug seizures. How can we continue to support drug seizures? And assuming that we're not going to stop, how can law enforcement ensure they communicate with public health and EMS so that we can save lives after their work is done? So that's a good one. Hall, I've never heard of such a thing. Why don't you take a stab at it?
You know, I don't want to say DEA, because that's not fair, but law enforcement, let's just say federal law enforcement. Federal law enforcement seizes drugs at our ports of entry. I think I sort of opened up my conversation with where I was and how it worked in Nogales, Arizona. So I know the question is how can we continue to seize drugs? I don't agree with that. I'm respectful of the question, and I don't know how we wouldn't seize drugs at our ports of entry when we see the numbers and the way that these drugs are destroying our communities. We are going against an enemy of our country when it comes to these cartels. I am not talking about the country. I am talking about the cartels. They are using addiction to line their pockets, and I don't think that not seizing drugs is the correct method. Now, I think the question is probably more aligned to, you know, the Lamoille County Sheriff's Department has a seizure of drugs in town. Why do they do that? And again, I'm rambling because I don't have a strong answer for that. I do think there probably is, I've never heard that study before. I do think there's probably some, I don't want to say legitimacy to it, but there probably is some legitimacy. I can totally understand it. You know, a dealer who mixes their drugs, we already talked about it, who cuts their drugs, you know, the individual who uses it is comfortable with that amount, knows how many bundles to use, you know, to get her through, him or her through, and then a new person comes in, their drugs could be stronger or they could be weaker, which would make her take more and then counteract the effects. I don't know.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Sorry, hi everyone. I'm Nicole Meagan. I am the Director of Harm Reduction and Recovery Services at the Health Department. And to that point, I just wanted to note that we, Julie, and other disruption in this area, activate your folks. And so you may not be seeing it here because disruptions may not have hit a threshold where we at the Department of Health and our Department of Public Safety folks would have been told. But just wanted to kind of have your add on to what you were sharing, that at a local level, at a state level, we are working to ensure that we are making harm reduction, clinical services, recovery services more visible and more amplified around those events to help support folks and lower that risk. That partnership is so important of seizures and that communication to our partners. So I welcome all law enforcement and other partners to be in touch.
Nicole, what is, when you mention disruption, what do you mean by that?
Sure, I think that can mean lots of things, and often we aren't told details because we shouldn't know details at the time or even shortly thereafter. Sometimes that could mean there are individuals who spoke about safety and violence who are maybe known to have large amounts of guns that are associated also with drug selling, and so maybe drugs aren't the focus, maybe it's seizure of firearms, but those folks may be incarcerated, which would make the drug supply look a little different.
Okay. Daniel?
Yeah, so I can actually send you the
You're
article.
going to have to speak up because I don't think these microphones are working.
Okay.
They just input audio into the TV folks.
So I discovered that article a few days ago, and I can send that to you. But the way the question was worded is it could be construed as saying that as being against seizures, and sort of construing the article as being against seizures and how law enforcement approaches it. I think that in a similar way to in the dawn of the prescription opioid monitoring system, when we cut down the supply of prescription opioids, a lot of people no longer had access to their supply of prescription narcotics and turned to more dangerous sources of that pain relief. In a similar way, when law enforcement disrupts the drug supply, people turn from their friendly neighborhood user, dealer, somebody that they knew and trusted, and turn instead to more dangerous and unpredictable drug supply. So that was my interpretation of the article when I read it, was that when you disrupt, it causes people to do things and to turn to sources. But my honest take on this in general is that over the years, there is no safe drug supply. Your first time could be your last time, and every time you use, it's Russian roulette with you're playing with fire. And even somebody who is not a bad person could be dealing something that they don't even know what is in it. And so, in many ways, the drug market and the way that Paul's talking about the user dealer, somebody who is co-opted into dealing drugs in order to feed their needs and in some cases make money, are dealing things that may end up killing their friends, their family, people that they do, and doing things that they never anticipated. And I think that was in part the tenor of the article, is to say that when we take away this quote unquote safe supply, suddenly people will turn to other things that that are very dangerous.
All right. Meagan?
The end part of that question was, so what happens after that? When, after maybe law enforcement leaves or EMS leaves, what are we doing then? And I wanted to just share that in the bags that we have for everybody today, what's also included in there is what we call the dandelion card. If anyone has a better name, our group is open to it. But it's essentially can fold into the size of a business card. And it was a collaboration between the Sheriff's Department, the MAT team, the Department of Health, and Healthy Lamoille, long before many of us were here. I know Roger was, but it lists just very quickly what are the immediate resources. And many members of law enforcement have that. We've been working on getting that to more of our EMS responders. So when they're responding to overdoses in the community, or they're responding to someone struggling, whether that's also, I think Lamoille County Mental Health has, the crisis team has some of those, they can give someone this card that can fit in their back pocket. That gives them an immediate, if you're in crisis, call this number. If you want medication-assisted treatment, call this number. If you want, other forms of treatment, call this number. And can be a way of, even if someone in that moment is refusing treatment or refusing to go to the hospital, they have something that tomorrow or the next day, when maybe their decision might look different, they can reference that and still have it. And I think the other part is having the recovery coaches available at the emergency department to have that one-on-one conversation with someone and say, I've been there, I've seen where you're sitting before, like, what can we do to support you? And having someone that's, maybe not a medical professional in that moment, that can see them person to person, I think can reach people in that moment too. So I think that's been really meaningful to people to have as well.
Thank you. Questions from the audience?
I'm sorry, can I add one more thing? I told Shannon that I didn't want to do the panel, and then here I'm talking. I think that it's also important to highlight that law enforcement and seizures are an important part of overcoming what we're experiencing. And so as individuals who have loved ones who might be at risk, one of the most important things is if you hear about a news article or disruption in your community, is having and continuing honest and open conversations with those loved ones to make sure that you know when they may be using, so that you can be there to provide rescue breaths or nourishment and call 911. Those are so important for us and can overcome some of the obstacles that were discussed. So just wanted to put some call to action that we all can take on to help support law enforcement in their work.
Thank you. I'll just mention that you don't see this in the paper every week, but law enforcement, the three departments that are here tonight, have administered Narcan many times. We have saved many individuals. So it's, again, it's not just about guns and handcuffs with us. Everybody carries Narcan, and you would just be surprised to know how many people are, at the parking lot down in Johnson at Sterling Market, nodding off in their car, and we have to bring them back. So we do have to do our job. We have to continue to seize drugs and to do everything we can to curtail the drug activity, illicit drug activity that's going on. Because now, we're charged with public safety, and now we're seeing more and more and more violence, and people from outside this area are not at all bashful about using weapons. So again, it's something that you're going to see more and more of, and I know in our department, in all three departments, we're not letting individual deputies work shifts alone if we can possibly help it anymore. It's just much too dangerous. So enough pontificating about that. But, sir?
Paul, your one slide seemed to indicate that Vermont, you mentioned drugs coming in from a variety of other places, that there seems to be an interest in Vermont. I'm wondering, do you have, and do you work with that information as to why? Is it perceived income levels, recreation, other factors that you have been able to identify why?
Yes, the overwhelmingly common reason is going to be the amount of money that they can sell a specific drug for here in the state, as opposed to where they are coming from. That would be the number one reason. That's the number one reason.
So Paul mentioned during his talk to us, he mentioned the word stepping on and cutting. For those of you that don't know what that is if you have, and this is going to be outlandish, but I'll just use it for easy figuring. If you have a kilo, 2.2 pounds of fentanyl, and it's 100% pure, and you want to, and you can get on the street, you can get $100,000 for that. Well, if you can make that 1 kilo into 4 kilos by adding horse tranquilizer or whatever else to it, and you're going to diminish the potency of that, but you can still get the same money, you stand a chance to make 4 times as much money. So what people do is they take, back in my day, I did a case where somebody crushed up a fluorescent light bulb and used that, as part of the cut. So it's all about money. And around here, what we're dealing with, all of our partners, is we're dealing with the people that unfortunately are hopelessly addicted, and we're trying to help them out of that. But for the intermediaries and their cartels, it's all about billions of dollars worth of money. So, questions? Let me see if I've got anybody else. Yes. Hi, Kitty.
I don't understand the economics in Vermont being greater than New Hampshire and Maine that would want to attract, from Detroit and Philadelphia and New York. Do people have that much more money here in Vermont?
No.
So why is Vermont targeted by so many?
Paul, can you repeat the question so it gets picked up for the
I'll
viewers at home?
repeat it. Yep. So the question is, what is it about Vermont that has all of these folks from different areas of the country bringing their drugs up here? Is the economics that much better? Are people paying that much more? Did I get that right?
You did. So it was 7:28 when the question was asked, so I didn't want to go down the second road, but there's something to be said for the laws within this state and some of the policies that individuals may not be prosecuted at the level that they would be prosecuted in some of the other states, like New Hampshire. That certainly plays a role in it. With that being said, I stand behind my initial statement, and with a place like Lawrence, Massachusetts, it's literally 20 minutes to New Hampshire and 30 minutes from Maine. So that is an accurate statement. But yes, to see 6, gigantic cities all, having individuals coming up here trafficking, when debriefing individuals subsequent to their arrest, over the course of years, my investigators have advised that those 2 factors play a role. And the second one is there as well. They're just not prosecuted at that level.
Yes.
Does our proximity to Montreal play any role?
The question is does our proximity to Montreal play a role in this?
We have not seen a gigantic amount of illicit drugs coming southbound from Canada. That is.
Do they go northbound to Canada?
So that's a good question. No. What we would see is Montreal has its own distribution network. Montreal has some level of organized crime. And so you would have bigger organizations such as Mexican cartels working directly with that organization, purchasing higher amounts as opposed to an organization based out of Philadelphia buying a kilogram of 2 and then sending it up. You would have an organization, again, we'll use the term cartel, working directly with organized crime in Montreal, working on a big shipment. You are not seeing what we see in Vermont in Montreal.
Years ago, we had quite a problem out of Quebec in Ontario with marijuana. And the Hells Angels were also involved with a lot of methamphetamines, but they would bypass Vermont and be going right down to the southern border, those guys. So, yes, Don.
Wanted to kind of remark, like, when Jenna was involved in this, she got involved with two different gangs that really kind of owned her. But she would tell me, Mom, it is a joke. This state is a joke when it comes to arresting people. And they know that. These gangs know that. They know that they can come up here and they can distribute drugs and get $100 fine. And they go back to Massachusetts or New York or whatever. They never come back to the court. And it's sickening to see that they know this. They have already figured out the system. And, in Jenna's situation, she got hooked up with somebody that had gotten a $100 fine for distributing fentanyl guns, and not guns, just fentanyl. And then he came back into the state. He ended up giving Jenna a hot pocket, and she died. But then he got arrested a week later for distributing fentanyl, guns, and he went to jail. But if we had arrested him the first time he was distributing guns, my daughter would be alive, maybe. But we didn't do anything but give him a small fine. And the law enforcement has their hands tied and they can't do it. And
Any other questions? Oh, Meagan?
I want to just add to that. I think from the treatment perspective, I think we are faced with in a lot of ways, a moral and ethical dilemma when it comes to that. Because we see, in some ways, outside sources being the bad guys. But when it's the people we know, the people in our community who are also engaged in that, we're a little bit more open to saying, let's not put them in jail, let's give them treatment, let's give them this opportunity. And so it's this balance of like, there's not a good answer. I'm not saying, one way is right or one way is not. But I think what I see in the people that I'm working with is that a lot of those people are also sometimes used in those systems. So they're getting the arrests, they're getting the tickets, and those other people are more in the background. So a lot of those people who are struggling are engaging in whether that's, selling drugs or selling their body or things like that in order to kind of support where they're at. And so as much as there's a place of like, if we just put everybody away, wouldn't that save our community and our loved ones? But at the same time, we want to offer our loved ones the grace to maybe get help in that situation too. And so I just wanted to bring that to the table.
Greg?
Yeah, I'm on the same bandwagon as Dom. There's a difference between people that get addicted here and gangs are using these people to distribute their drugs. It's not that people are supplying their habit that we're after. It's the gangs that are bringing it in here. And we're not going to win this with a picnic basket and a bowl of flowers, I can tell you that. So if anybody in this room, that first question's absolutely ludicrous. You're never going to fix that problem like that. Everybody in this room is working their butts off. We're doing everything we can do, and we're still losing. And that's because the third leg on the stool is gone. There's no leg for the law enforcement to stand on. And we're never going to win it with prevention and treatment. Until we stop, you say, oh, we busted these people, and now what are these people going to do? Well, maybe they're going to seek treatment. Maybe they're going to come to the recovery center or get into inpatient or whatever. When you slow that supply down and they start to relapse, then they're going to change what they're doing. They're going to seek treatment. They're going to do whatever they can to get out of that pain that they're going to experience. And it's just insane that we sat here and let these people come into our communities and ruin our people and ruin our communities, and we think we're just going to give them a pack of flowers and a picnic basket. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. If you think we're going to win this battle like that, this whole forum we might as well not even have it. That's insane. We've got to get after these. And for Paul, I mean, for me, if you know where these places are in Mexico, then why aren't we bombing them? Just go in and take the friggin' things out. They killed 100,000 of our people this year. 240 people in this state, and we can't go in there and protect our own people? That's insanity. These guys are ruthless. They don't care about anything. They're killing their own clients. They kill people that are buying drugs from them. That goes to show you what we're dealing with. It's getting worse, and we've got to change our tactics.
All right, I'm going to take, thanks, Greg. I'm going to take one last question, and we're at 7:40 now. We're a little bit over, but sir.
I'm a teacher, and I'm teaching my kids who this is affecting their lives. I'll have an opportunity to maybe ask some of our local providers, and thank you so much. But while Mr. Spera is here, I guess from a legal law aside, like from a physical interception standpoint, like I'm wondering what the strategy is for, and obviously it's a national problem, but we care about Northern New England. Like, does it happen like at our border? You know, what's DEA doing to try and keep the flow going from further south up here? And I guess I'm wondering if there's special things about our landscape, our transportation network, and without being extremely curious about the anything thing. I mean, I'm familiar with Lawrence and Lowell because I have friends who live down there, and I'm familiar with that community. But like, you think everyone would be anyone who is willing to break the law would make a phone. So I guess I'm wondering about the special nature of Northern England, distribution Northern England, how the strategy for physically intercepting that with the challenges.
Everyone heard the question? Your first question, which you had multiple questions, the one that was just the easy one is the natural landscape. I don't think that we have a natural landscape that is more cohesive or to drug trafficking. We have these three states are obviously somewhat rural, location, distance, the ability to, I have to drive on the interstate for 3 hours to get to you. You then will pay more money than at a city, in a city like. So I do think the only thing geographically that plays a role is going to be proximity to these distribution cities. So I think that's the primary thing. I don't think there's anything else. The other thing that's just fascinating, and again, way before my time, is New England has always been sort of an opioid area, right? We've always been a heroin opioid user region. Methamphetamine was in, and again, I'm very cognizant of the time, methamphetamine was popular out west in the 1970s and 80s with motorcycle gangs, and it hasn't hit us yet, and vice versa. So, fentanyl has certainly made its way out west now, but those are just a couple of factors. With organizations, you have to cut off the head, and everyone brings up really good points here. You have to cut off the head. Interdiction is helpful, it works, and it is a deterrent, right? If you have 4 members of the Vermont State Police literally sitting there on the interstate system on I-91 as you get into Brattleboro and you start doing that, that's a deterrent. Is that taking down the head of the snake? The answer is obviously not. The head of the snake, the head of the organization, is not the one driving the product. You're going to have a runner, a drug runner. And if a couple of people get hit, what are they going to do? Unfortunately, they're going to take people that we just talked about, that we all just talked about, which are people that may be using hey, you come down, you take the ride instead when their friends get busted, people that they feel are expendable. I mean, that's fine. Interdiction plays a role as a deterrent, but it is not the only thing. The way to take this down is going after the networks, going after the way it is distributed, going after, the organizations. And the last thing I'm going to say, again, very cognizant of the time, is going to be something called extradition, which is something that Mexico, other than the one time that they did, does not do when it comes to their kingpins, which is extradition is when you take someone that is prosecuted or indicted in the United States, you have that country, wherever they live, arrest them and extradite them back to the United States to face charges. That is one of the only things that cartel heads are fearful of. They can control law enforcement, they control military, they can control governments when some of these other countries that produce drugs, but they can't do that here. So that is going to be a way. But again, this is not a time for politics, but that may or may not have been happening, that may or may not be extremely successful right now when you look at an overall view on what we're doing with DEA.
Thanks. Daniel, 1 minute.
I just want to kind of wrap this up by giving us all something that we can do ourselves to try to help with this problem, and that is, as we try to fight this macro level societal issue, please see these tables, get some Narcan. Every bag has Narcan. The recovery center has Narcan. One thing we are lucky is that the SEO, Division of Substance Use Services, that Nicole represents, they have made Narcan widely available. Go learn about the fentanyl test strips and xylazine test strips. Johnson Health Center is one of the first in the state to provide xylazine test strips. Xylazine is coming from Philadelphia in huge waves right now. It is here, as well as Perk 30s, as well as methamphetamine. Johnson Health Center, Recovery Center, Vermont Department of Health, you can find a map of where to get it. Everyone should have it. Everyone should have it in their car. Everyone should have it at their workplace. So if you can do one thing leaving here today, talk to your partners who are ready to be at your service, but put yourself in a position to save somebody's life. You never know where it's happening in our parking lots, it's happening in our libraries, it's happening in our schools, it's happening all around us. It defies any demographic. Let's just arm ourselves to fight, to all be in a position to help each other. So that would be my call to action.
Thank you. I'll leave you with one thought. As long as somebody demands drugs, there's going to be cartels, there's going to be people looking to make the money. So as each of us can, as much as we can do it, and I'll use me as an example. I've got 2 children. I'm going to be juniors this year. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they do not become a consumer of drugs and contribute to the problem. So prevention, I think, is so important because I've been doing this since 1984, working in narcotics enforcement. And it's gotten worse. We haven't, the process that we're using doesn't work. So law enforcement has to continue to protect the public from these folks and do everything we can. But we as a society have to work with our kids, the very newest generations coming up, and prevent them from becoming a consumer and contributing to the problem. So I don't see that we're ever going to chop enough heads off to win that battle. And that's not a slam on DEA at all. I think they're a wonderful organization, and the same thing with law enforcement. We have to protect the public. But the only way that we're going to deal with this is to reduce the demand. And if there's no demand, then these cartels will go to selling cars or whatever else they can do to make money. So I would like to end by thanking Special Agent Paul Spera for making the trip up here from Manchester, New Hampshire. You know, I hope that I certainly learn something every time I listen to him speak, and I'd like to thank him very much. Paul, thank you. I would like to also thank our panel and all of our partners that work in each and every day to help make this community safe. So thank you all, and have a good night. And if there's anything left to eat, grab it, and don't forget the bags. But thank you, folks.